start by taking you back in time. Think for a moment back to January 2017, after the inauguration of President Donald Trump. This was a time full of uncertainty. No matter their political ideology, everyone had questions about the new administration. On the heels of a campaign full of bold rhetoric, many wondered about the execution of certain promises made on the campaign trail. To a good portion of the country, some campaign ideas seemed absurd or impossible to implement, especially those surrounding immigration. Today, I'm going to focus specifically on the proposed travel ban, an executive order officially titled Protecting the Nation from Foreign Terrorist Entry into the United States, but also commonly known as a Muslim ban. The ban was issued on January 27, 2017, only a week after Trump took office. Chaos ensued in airports immediately after. A few days later, Saturday Night Live produced a very effective satirical video mocking the proposed legislation. The skit, Welcome Video, uses satirical techniques such as parody, verbal irony, and exaggeration to persuade the viewer of its message that Trump's policy is changing America from a welcoming melting pot that allows immigrants the opportunity to achieve the American dream, to a country that is not only bureaucratically disorganized, but also racist and religiously intolerant. So how exactly does SNL convey this idea? The whole skit is a parody of the video made by U.S. Customs and Border Protection that is shown on planes entering the United States. It appears realistic until clear edits are made to show last-minute changes to the video. These edits create the satire by showing how different the image of America will be after the travel ban is implemented. I'd now like to play a brief clip of the skit to show the techniques used.
You'll also need a valid passport from your country of origin.
Not including Iraq, Iran, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, or Yemen, and maybe Australia. We'll see.
Our priority is to make this process easy for each and every one of you.
Not you, not you. No way. Nice try. Not you. Oh, wait, he's good. Come on in, bud. Aw, no.
Verbal irony. When words express something contrary to the truth or what the speaker really means, is used heavily in this portion of the skit to illustrate how the original video no longer represents the values of America in the new era of the travel ban. The speaker first mentions needing a valid passport from your country of origin, implying that as long as a passport is genuine, there should be no issue. However, the edits make it clear that this statement is no longer true as a result of the travel ban, since the validity of a passport is not the only issue. Now, one's country of origin is problematic as well. This is unexpected, especially for the time the video was made, when the idea for this ban was new and unprecedented, creating a shock factor that adds to the satirical effect. The speaker's next use of verbal irony is when she says, "Our priority is to make the process easy for each and every one of you." Again, the edits show up and boldly dismiss this claim, singling out and eliminating the majority of people waiting in line because of their race or religion. This clear contrast between the speaker's words and the true meaning revealed by the edits is verbal irony at its most effective. SNL makes the explicit argument that Trump's travel ban is motivated by racism and Islamophobia, as opposed to a true concern for safety, by quickly going through and deciding who shouldn't be allowed in, based solely on their appearance. This also brings in some exaggeration about the bureaucracy and the vetting process, by emphasizing the racial motivation of the ban through the method used to block people from entry. Obviously, this wouldn't be the real method of determining who is let into the country, but the use of exaggeration effectively illustrates the point that Trump's policy is racist and much less based in reason than in discrimination. Another important detail to note is that the narrator initially blocks one man from entering and then realizes that he's white and decides to let him in. The viewer can also see that he is clearly holding a large gun. This example is situational irony, in that you don't expect to see someone so obviously armed in an airport in the first place. However, it is especially shocking when the narrator lets him in anyway. This highlights SNL's message of the ineffectiveness of the bureaucracy. The ban is supposedly meant to prevent terrorists from entering the country, but the one dangerous person is let in anyway because he's white, while many other presumably innocent, good people are prevented from entering because of their race or religion, bringing home the point that the legislation is both racist and useless. The skit then goes on to employ more verbal irony, focusing mainly on the bureaucracy, by contrasting words from the original video with the edited words.
In addition, be asked to provide a few
100.
simple
Confusing.
forms. If you need assistance, there will be someone
No one.
to help you. With all your forms filled out, proceed ahead.
Also forms D9, W8, F12, and D9B.
You're almost done.
Getting started.
The contrast of few with 100, simple with confusing, someone with no one, and almost done with getting started uses antitheton to create verbal irony with the contradiction between what is said originally and what is meant now. Getting through customs and into the United States will be very, very difficult, especially after the ban is in place. This again goes back to the idea of changing the way America is viewed. Where the country was once seen as welcoming, the red tape involved in the entry process makes it seem daunting, as if it is trying more to weed people out than to let people in and give them an opportunity for a better life. All of these examples of verbal irony are especially comedic and effective because of the format they are laid out in. Many times, verbal irony is implied and must be inferred by the viewer. However, used together with the parody of the plain video, SNL is able to create a scenario with the edited portions of the video that allows them to truly highlight exactly how everything said in the original video no longer applies as a result of the travel ban. The true meaning shows up on screen in bold red letters, while the contrast between what is said and what is meant is narrated through the edits, exaggerating the verbal irony and making the skit more humorous with a clearer message. The next clip I'm going to discuss focuses on exaggeration of the vetting process.
Effective immediately, all visitors will be subject to extreme vetting procedures, including a highly detailed questionnaire.
The exaggeration of the simplicity in the method used to decide who should be allowed into the United States, as well as verbal irony contrasting highly detailed with the single question asked, is humorous because it accurately reflects criticisms of the ban. Although these decisions are clearly not as simple as this, many people who think Trump's ban is motivated by hate argue that it essentially boils down to banning all Muslims from the country because of the negative stereotype that Muslims are terrorists. So, the exaggeration effectively illustrates the point that a ban based solely on the question of a person's religion is ridiculous, and the travel ban is not far off. Now we'll take a look at one last clip.
What is the purpose of your visit?
I'm here to see my mother. She is a
Terrorist.
What is your occupation?
I am a certified
Drug dealer.
Welcome to the United States.
Go home, please. Okay, I understand. Bye. America first.
This last example brings back the idea of the entire video being a parody. This section uses the style of the same scene from the normal customs video, but changes the words so it no longer resembles a normal interaction with a customs officer. This parody, along with the rest of the video, mocks the way the travel ban drastically increases suspicion in the entry process. Choosing to have the lady say she is a drug dealer and her mother is a terrorist, when clearly that is not what was said in the original video, shows that because of the new policy, customs officers hear what they want to and are trying as hard as they can to find reasons to keep people out of the country. It also mocks how easy Trump thinks it will be to keep terrorism out of the United States. The exaggeration of how clearly the connection to terrorism is stated, as well as how little she resists being told to leave, makes fun of the idea that suddenly the travel ban is going to completely eradicate terrorism in the United States. Also, the lady is white, so SNL is pointing out that if she were a problem, which she very well could be, she wouldn't be blocked by the travel ban. And Customs is relying on her explicitly stating her connection to terrorism, clearly showing how ineffective the policy is. I'd like to close today by bringing up an important point about context and its relation to the effectiveness of satire. I remember first watching this video when it was released. At that point, the shock factor of the satire used in the clip was powerful, to say the least. In its early stages of implementation, the idea that the president was really attempting to ban Muslims from entering the US was still setting in, and the fact that this was such a remarkable move is in large part what makes the skit so funny. Somehow, almost 2 years later, and 3 versions of the travel ban later, the skit isn't nearly as funny to me as it once was. I think many times we don't revisit the satirical pieces we have watched before, but part of what makes this analysis so interesting is that we are actually taking the time to reanalyze an old piece of satire. With the notion of a Muslim ban finally having set in, and the humorous bits of the skit being much, much closer to our reality now, the shock factor is reduced and the humor, while not entirely lost, is diminished. directly linked to context, and the humor contributes to the effective persuasion of the message. At the time of its initial release, the comedic factor of the skit was exceptionally strong, leading the message to be conveyed at an equally strong level. Watching the video again with a changed context illustrates how important shock value and humor are to effective satire. Today, the video is still an effective parody, but having grown accustomed to the Trump administration truly taking action on what once seemed like outlandish promises, the skit has lost some of its original power. Then especially, but still now, the video is effective in using verbal irony, exaggeration, and parody to persuade the audience that Trump's travel ban is changing the US for the worse to a suspicious, racist, and Islamophobic nation. Thank you.